Hey everyone, it's John, and today this is going to be a simple video on this Honda CB300F. I've owned this bike for about 6 months now, and I just wanted to kind of share with you guys my thoughts, because when I was looking for this bike, I found a lot of videos on YouTube, and not a whole lot of them were based here in the US. A lot of them were over in India. So this is going to be from a US approach as far as riding this thing on the interstate. Of course, everything's going to be in miles per hour and miles per gallon. So if that's what you're looking for, that's what you're going to get out of this. So why did I choose this bike? Well, first of all, it is a very inexpensive bike. I paid just a little over $2,000 for this, and so it really doesn't cost a whole lot if you are relatively new to motorcycling, which this was my first bigger bike. I've got a Grom over there. That's what I started on, and then I picked this up, like I said, about 6 months ago, and I have really liked this bike. I will say, I'll just swing a leg over here so that I can show you. This has a relatively low seat height. This is about 30 inches tall. And I'm about 6'2", 175 pounds, and this bike fits me really well. I'll kind of sit down on it so you can see here, but this is very, very approachable for a newer rider. And I'm a little bit of a taller guy. I can get away with a little bit of a taller motorcycle. Like, I've got the CRF right here behind me, and this is about a 34-inch seat height. And this, once I compress it down, I can still flat foot it. But it is something to note that if you're wanting something very approachable, this definitely is it. And the second thing we'll talk about, and I think kind of the elephant in the room, is power. How powerful is this? Well, it's definitely not blow your socks off fast, but for me, at least, being under 200 pounds, it feels fairly quick to me. Like, this is, it's like driving kind of a quick car, not a fast car, but a quick car. It's fun to ride around, and because it only has 300 cc's, this is a little bit lighter weight than the 500cc variant. And so that may be something that if you're wanting a very light flickable bike, this is light and flickable. And then how does it do on the interstate? Well, it actually does pretty good on the interstate in my experience. I've had this go, the fastest I've gone is about 85 miles an hour, and it is screaming. It's up there in the revs, but it's not hitting red line or anything like that, so it can definitely do it. Now, would I do it for an hour and a half? Probably not. But for a 30-minute stint on the interstate, you can absolutely sprint to where you're going. That's not a problem at all with this bike. But I do think it is probably best suited scooting around town or on 55-mile-an-hour roads. But it is nice to have the capability to go on the interstate if you need to. I've seen some videos of some people, and they may have weighed a little bit more than me, saying that it has trouble on the interstate. For me, I find that this is all that I need. Now, let's talk about fuel economy. This bike actually is very good on fuel economy. In my experience, you get 70 to 75 miles per gallon if you're driving very carefully. And then if you're on the interstate screaming, it's about 60, 65 is what I've experienced. Now, I will also say that this bike is a little more capable than I was expecting off-road. I've definitely had this bike some places where it probably should not have been. This is, of course, before I had the CRF over there to do some more serious off-roading. But just on gravel roads and things like that, wanting to explore, you're on a nice curvy road and you see something that you want to explore, this can do it as long as you go slow in first or second gear. And so I've had this some places it probably should not have been, but it did handle it just fine. So if you are wanting something where you're going to be primarily on road, but if you want to take it down a gravel road, that is something that you can do with this. It's not a problem. And that's something that I also wanted to point out. It's a question that I kind of had when I was first looking at these. Now, I think it's hard to talk about a Honda without talking about maintenance and reliability. And the maintenance schedule on this is insane. It has an 8,000-mile oil change interval, which I've been changing this about every 1,500 to 2,000 miles. So I'm just actually one oil change in at this point. We're closing in on another oil change. I'm sure it's fine going the full 8,000. It's just not something that I'm comfortable doing. And it's, of course, 8,000 or 1 year. And so you'd have to ride quite a lot to actually hit that 8,000 in 1 year. So oil changes are very, very easy. Of course, you've got your chain as well. I haven't had any issues with the chain really stretching or anything. I had it kind of snugged up when I first got the bike doing my overall inspection, and it hasn't moved since, which is great. Now, I've not had any real issues with this bike in 6 months of ownership and closing in on 2,000 miles now. The only issue that I have noticed, and you can maybe chime in the comments and see if this is a big deal or if you've experienced this, but it is going to be down here underneath the engine. It's kind of hard to point out, but right underneath where your oil filter cap is, right under there, there's what's called a weep hole. And in my experience, this thing it drips oil out of there, and drips may be an extreme word. What I mean by that is when I pull it into the garage, there will be maybe 1 or 2 oil drops on the end of that. And so what I have found with this bike is I need to add about 150 to 200 milliliters of oil per 1,000 miles of riding. So this is certainly not a huge deal. I don't know if the bike is burning a tiny bit of oil when I'm revving it really high on the interstate, or if it is just that little bit of residual drip that comes out of there after a ride. In doing some research, I have found some folks on forums saying that they have also experienced this weep hole drip. I don't think it's a huge deal, but I did want to mention it. That's the only issue that I've really come across with this bike. And it is something that I'm testing. I do have some stop leak that I have put in there that I had seen on another forum. And so I will report back with that. We're kind of currently in testing with that right now to see how the bike responds to that. And I will say, fingers crossed, it's been about 2 weeks in there, and I actually haven't noticed much oil there. It seems to be reduced, if not stopping altogether. So that may be fixed. We will see. We'll kind of report back. But even if it is dripping a little bit, that's not a huge deal to me because it is such a minuscule amount of oil. So that kind of sums up my ownership with this bike so far. Do I recommend it? Wholeheartedly. I absolutely would buy this bike again. You just can't beat the Honda reliability and quality for the price. This is a very approachable and fun street bike, and you can even get out and do a little bit of light off-roading with it too, which I appreciate. This is definitely something that I have enjoyed owning and not something that I plan on selling anytime soon. So I hope this was helpful, kind of sharing with you my thoughts on this and how this has been with my experience with this bike. Hope this may help you aid in a buying decision, whether this is something that you want or maybe something that you say, you know what, I think I want something else. I hope this was helpful. Thanks so much for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.